Sean Garvey from Obsidian Sun, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about getting through a songwriting drought. There's a couple of things I like to think about. I find that most of us that are writing songs, we tend to go to what's comfortable. So we go to the chords that are comfortable and the chord progressions. Usually we find one guitar that we write on, or we find a place that we go to, and then we wonder why we get to a point we just stop. We can't keep creating. So I like to try to get uncomfortable and find ways to break out of that. A lot of times, just going to different tunings can help with that. It's also a good excuse to go find a new guitar, head down to the pawn shop and see what you can find. I also will jump onto other instruments, and I can't play piano really, but I can play chords, and I can get on a piano and start to hear things differently. And the whole idea is to just to make that switch, so you start hearing notes differently and hearing chords differently. And I go back to this thing that I read something about where Tom Waits had said, as soon as people realize what they're hearing, they stop listening. And so I find that, as a songwriter, I want to take the listener somewhere where they're not either intending to go or they haven't gone before. So you can do that through the narrative, you can do that through, sonically through the music. And so I try to keep that in mind so that you're keeping it fresh for people. And, it doesn't mean you got to write, Bone Machine or something way out there, but at least taking people away from the norm. So the other thing I find that's really important is staying connected to that creative source. And so I go back to when I was growing up. I remember hearing this recording of Townes Van Zandt playing live, and he introduces a song, and the crowd starts to applaud, and then he stops and he goes, "Yeah, it's a really good song." And I remember thinking when I heard that, that's kind of strange. And then he stops and says, "It's okay for me to say that because I didn't write the song; it just came to me." And I think if you talk to any songwriter or artist and you stop them and say, "Hey, how'd you come up with that?" They'd probably have a hard time explaining it. And I feel there's this connection to a creative source, and it gets harder and harder to stay connected in these times, right? Our culture now, we just race through everything. We're bombarded with information, and so carving out that time and keeping that connection becomes harder. But it's totally vital to what we're doing as artists or songwriters. And so I find, for me, there's a lot of different ways to do that. But, when I wake up, I try to fill up a piece of paper with just stream of consciousness ideas, throw it down. And a lot of stuff you're going to end up throwing away, but there'll be some gems in there, and then you keep those and you tuck those away for later. Also like to but staying open as you're working or you're going through your day. And if you see things that you think have some poetry to them, you write them down and you keep them. And again, you just keep going back to that. And so I think it's vital to what we do is somehow stay connected even as we're getting pulled away from that through our day-to-day lives.